So what did happen in Golden State with Mark Jackson? Boy, lots to talk about in this one. Let's get at it. So another episode of Beyond the Locker Room with your host Brian Tull. Today we're going to discuss the firing of Mark Jackson at Golden State for the Golden State Warriors. Kind of like my thoughts on what I think might happen. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff coming out in the last 24 hours from Mark Jackson, as well as sources that have come out saying what about kind of some really cruel or rough rumors. So let's get into it. So Mark Jackson was fired by the Golden State Warriors after winning 51 games this year. The team went to the playoffs and lost in the first rounds of the Clippers. In a really grueling 7-game series. I mean, they were right into it. They were leading with about a minute and a half or 2 minutes left to go of the game 7 on the road, and they ended up losing by about 3 or 4 points to the Clippers. So a really tough matchup. You gotta ask yourself. I mean, there's this trend that's been going on for the last year or two in the NBA where top coaches that have successfully run their teams where they've been in a better position or as good a position when it comes to success as the year before have gotten fired at the end of the season. You saw it with Lionel Hollins, you saw it with Vinny Del Negro. Took the Clippers to I think the highest win total they had at the time they ever seen. He was gone. Memphis went to when Lionel Hollins went to the Western Conference Finals last year. He was gone. You see it now with Golden State with Mark Jackson. George Karl actually had a great season for Denver. I think it was their highest win total. I put the George Karl one a little to the side because I think his had a lot more to do with his own record as far as his playoff and postseason success. So I think I put that one to the side. I think there's more extenuating circumstances for that firing. But then, of course, the one happened just yesterday with Mark Jackson. So there's been a lot of stuff about why Mark Jackson was fired. We've heard over the course of the season, that 2 of his assistants were let go, or one was demoted and one was essentially fired. And you've heard various reasons why that might have been the case. And you heard in this case, from the Scalabrine standpoint, that I've heard now through beyond the BS report with Rich Bucher on how Scalabrine was, in a sense, disrespecting Jackson. Even if he had differing opinions with Mark Jackson, I think there's a way to handle yourself. He's still your boss in essence. And then for Mark Jackson himself, now we haven't heard from Scalabrine, and the organization in this case has been kind of quiet on that front when it comes to that. But my whole take, and then the second one with the Ehrman fellow in this case here, where he was caught recording conversations. Now, based on what we've had, we learned a lot about privacy laws in California after the Sterling issue. About that, and this dude technically be charged with privacy, with breaking privacy laws by recording the coach, the assistant coaches. I think even sometimes I heard in some, it's not so rumors, actually I heard in certain documents they might have been times when discussions with players. So the thing I find fascinating with Ehrman is that a few days later he gets a job with Boston. Danny Ainge rehires him at Boston. So I mean, I'm not sure what that says about not only the gentleman's character but Danny Ainge's character, which has always been a little suspect to me in the first place. But that's a whole other story for another day. Watching him from his basketball career, he's known to do some shady stuff on the court. But I mean, I'll leave it at that. But I think overall this Mark Jackson thing was a whole mess from the beginning, because for a few reasons. I think it's one, when you have someone in this case like Mark Jackson, who in this case is very strong with his opinions. I think when you see someone like Mark Jackson who has a high sense of himself, that's fine if you have confidence in yourself. But if you're not willing to listen to any sort of any sort of feedback, then that's where where issues can start popping up. You combine that now, and I think also too. Not saying that he being a pastor actually is the reason why he got fired. I'm not going to say that. What I will say is I think as a pastor, sometimes, not all the time, but you're used to this case of when you speak in this case here, you're not used to any sort of pushback a lot of times. I think at least I've observed sometimes with pastors or preachers or folks in that type of role And I think, I think that can be said in a lot of leadership positions sometimes, that you're used to saying something and hey, off people go, or off they believe in what you had to say, and that's it. And there's no pushing back or whatsoever. So I think when you have that, man, I think coaches fall in that as well too. So you throw in that mindset from a coaching standpoint, and then throw in his skills as an orator, as a pastor. I think that even kind of just puts it on steroids in this case. But then you mix in the part then with the other half of the ingredients in this case, I think, where things really get kind of out of hands. When you have an owner, in this case, this Lakeup fella that owns the Warriors, he's, for what you understand, reading some of the articles, listening to the BS report, he's involved like in every bit of minutia with the team. Now, true, you own the team, you pay for the team, you pay a lot of money for the team. I get it, you want to get involved in things, but when you're getting involved, or you're asking about players' injuries, and you're trying to find out, what the coach's strategy is in the third quarter of games and stuff, fall back a little bit, homie, fall back. I mean, I like the Mavericks in this case here. Overall, a Cuban fan as far as the owner goes, but this reminds me a lot of Cuban in the early days, where even now, if you look at Cuban now, he's stepped back in his role, picks his spots of when he wants to actually be public about certain things, but it doesn't have to be so heavy-handed with everything. I think this is where I think Lakeup in this case sees himself as a bit of an expert, basketball expert. Maybe because he plays a lot of fantasy basketball. I don't know, but I know he's obviously a huge fan. But at some point, you gotta let the basketball people do basketball stuff. Then throw the fact his family's working for the team, and understandably in this case, hey, Jackson and the son didn't get along too well, and hey, you know how it goes, man. You don't like the boss's kid, that strikes up some issues. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. You throw in Jerry West as well too, where he's an advisor to the team, and anyone that knows Jerry West's personality and seen him, Jerry West is going curmudgeon, and Jerry West in this case doubts everything, even decisions that he's made. He doubts after 10 seconds of it. So to have him around nitpicking at wherever you do every 5 seconds, that would be a bit annoying. I mean, you heard stories of Phil Jackson kicking Jerry West out of practices, even though on this front, Mark Jackson says, he never did kick him out. So all I can do is take his word for it, he didn't kick him out, and I never heard Jerry West say anything otherwise. So as far as I'm concerned, he didn't kick him out. But I think that type of needling that Jerry West historically has been prone to do, as great as he is an executive, that there, you throw that in with Lakeup and his interjections every few few days, few hours, whatever it may be. Then you throw in the boss's son not getting along with Jackson. That's a whole other thing. And you create this atmosphere and this culture of pretty much where there's this tension that starts happening about who's control of what and where. And I think that's where you have guys like Scalabrini that feel that they could just do what they want in this case, and feel that they can be in favor with upper management because, hey, they're going against Mark Jackson. And when you do that, you undermine the coach's ability to kind of govern and coach his team the way he needs to coach it. So I think if I'm another coach with Golden State, as well as the opportunity was great, look at the talent they have, I would really have to question what type of culture they're really building there from the, I have to ask the management, what happened. It can't just be, I didn't like you didn't like me, and that's it. It's got to be a little bit more than that, because from what we're hearing, and the way Golden State's going about it, I mean, all the other examples I mentioned, Hollins, Del Negro, Carl, last year, what you didn't hear afterwards was a 24, 48 hour blitz about, how they did this and how they did that and how they're a horrible person here. All this stuff here has been coming out. It's been a pretty good slagging of Jackson's reputation. Whatever you might think of Jackson, I think that there's a little unfair to him, and it just really pulls into question what type of professionalism Golden State has in this case, with some of the innuendo that's come out. Of course, they're going to backtrack and not admit it, but who else can it come out from? So those are some of the things that cross my mind. There's also the whole religious aspect of it as well too, with Jackson having his strong thoughts, obviously, and convictions, when it comes to homosexuality, and people are questioning if that had something to do with it, considering that the president, I believe it's the president of Golden State, is a gay man. So is that had something to do with it? I mean, obviously they would never say that had something to do with it, because I think it's illegal to fire someone for religious beliefs, but that could be, that is something that people have probed, if that was part of the situation, kind of mixed up in this whole thing. I mean, I think it's a big mess. I think more is going to come out in the coming weeks and months about how this all went down. And it leads to another point, which Stephen A. Smith brought up about the Steve Kerr component of it. about, when did Steve Kerr become the golden boy? And I've been wondering that myself too. Like, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's like, is there no other coaches out there besides Steve Kerr? I mean, Steve Kerr's never coached anywhere. I'm not saying that's a prerequisite that he has to coach, because obviously Mark Jackson had coached before that, as well as Jason Kidd. But I think to Stephen A. Smith's point, we've never seen a bidding war going on for one person who's had such little experience. It's one thing when you have a personal relationship with someone and they want to bring you in and think you're customly made for that job, i.e. Jason Kidd with the Nets, obviously with his history with the Nets, i.e. in this case even maybe Mark Jackson, Golden State, where they reached out to him, or even Phil Jackson in this case with the Knicks and Steve Kerr. All that made sense, but when I'm hearing like by the day different teams, I mean, I think yesterday Utah put their name in the hat in the Steve Kerr sweepstakes. I'm like, come on, guys, like really, there's got to be. I mean, you got dudes sitting on the bench here. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole race thing. I mean, there's elements that you got to wonder about, but I mean, that said, I mean, there's just professional guys out there like Stan Van Gundy sitting out there, Lyle Hollins out there. I mean, like, come on, man, like really. I mean, I personally think Lyle Hollins would be great in Utah. Actually, I think he would be a really good fit there. It's a very similar setup, small market, just like Memphis. They got some good young talent, which Memphis had when he started with them. I think he would be great in Utah. But we'll see how it plays out. Really interesting times in the NBA. So much interest off the court that it's hard to even talk about what's on the court. Hopefully next week we'll get a little deeper in the second round playoffs. Things are kind of going according to plan, I think, to some extent. I mean, I think I had Chicago to beat Indiana this round, so I'm out in that case with Chicago, but still feel Washington in this case can take out Indiana. Miami, I think, are going to roll over Brooklyn. I had Toronto, I think, in this round too, so I think Miami's going to deal with Brooklyn. And on the other side, San Antonio, I think, it's going to be tough, but I think they'll pull out with Portland. And I think on the other side, I think the Clippers, I think overall are the better team. Just too much weapons for OKC for what I've seen after 2 games. So we'll see. Let's get to it. Let's wrap it up here, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys next week. Down below, you can subscribe down below, send it out to your friends and family, share it through Facebook or Twitter, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Peace.